My parents forced me to run their failing motel from age 6, using my name to commit fraud. When I tried to escape, they called the authorities on me, but they didn't know the social worker they called had her own history with my family. In my family, the eldest daughter was expected to run the family business. Not help with, not work at, but become the actual manager from the moment she could count cash. I checked on my first guest at the Starlight Motel when I was 6 years old. You see, my mother was the heir to a rundown roadside motel she treated like a life sentence. My father was a long-haul trucker, but somehow his paychecks always disappeared into truck repairs or nights at the bar. They both came from families where this was just how things worked. By the time I was 8, I was managing the front desk and cleaning 3 rooms a day. My parents would leave for their supply runs, which were really just trips to the city, while I handled check-ins and flipped no vacancy signs. Soon you'll get married and pass this blessing on to someone else. My mother would say each time the business loan was denied, her eyes landing on me like I was a long-term investment. Fast forward 8 years. When I turned 14, my mother sat me down at the front desk with a formal announcement. She was pregnant again. Nothing new. Except this time, she handed me a ledger labeled Operational Duties, with my name listed as General Manager from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. "You're old enough to handle the night audit alone now," she said. My father nodded from his bar stool. "We canceled your debate club. The motel comes first." The worst part was when they told me I'd need to get a job at the local diner to cover the cost of linens, because they couldn't afford extras. They called it diversifying my skill set. "This is what legacy looks like in our family," they said. "You have a real talent for this, much more than we ever did." My day started at 5:30 a.m., making coffee for the lobby while my parents slept in. I fell asleep during a health inspection once, and my parents told everyone I must be sneaking out at night. A long-term resident started calling me boss lady, and people would give us looks. Then came the breaking point. I'd worked so hard to get a full academic scholarship to my dream college. The acceptance letter arrived on a Tuesday. For once, I wasn't an underage motel manager. I was just Maya, a normal girl going to a normal college. I was in the middle of happy tears when my mother walked in. "I'm pregnant," she announced. My face dropped. "It's twins." That was the same week that my dad decided to be even more neglectful than usual. I had to be the one to deal with a broken boiler, to handle a guest's medical emergency, to fix the ice machine, all while taking care of the front desk. The college counselor called the next week, saying I needed to submit final financial aid paperwork by 3 p.m. A tour bus of seniors arrived unexpectedly, all needing rooms, and the credit card machine went down. I missed the deadline by 10 minutes. The scholarship was withdrawn for lack of follow-through. My parents said college would have been a bad investment anyway. I started planning my escape in secret. I applied to a community college and got accepted. I got a part-time job at a diner and hid my money in a shoebox under a loose floorboard in my room. My 16-year-old sister, Chloe, found out but promised to keep quiet. For once, everything was going according to plan, until my parents found the acceptance letter I'd hidden in my accounting textbook. My mother cried about all their sacrifices. My father threatened to kick me out if I abandoned the family legacy. I didn't say a word, and the next day, I came home from work to find the motel swarming with social workers. Apparently, my parents told them I was the unstable manager who was running the place into the ground. The social worker, a sharp woman named Ms. Evans, saw through it but gave me an impossible choice. Either I stayed as the acting manager, or my siblings would go into foster care. My parents stood there, smirking like they'd won, but I had an ace up my sleeve. Chloe had been recording them on her phone for weeks. Ms. Evans pulled out her clipboard and started asking questions while my parents stood there with their arms crossed. Chloe slipped her phone into my hand behind her back. I felt the weight of it like a lifeline. "These recordings," I said, my voice steadier than I felt, "they show everything." My mother's face went white. My father stepped forward, grabbing for the phone, but Ms. Evans held up her hand. "Let's all stay calm. Maya, can you show me what you have?" I played the first recording. My mother's voice filled the room, clear as day. "Maya needs to understand her place. She's the oldest. This is her responsibility until she gets married and has her own business to run." My father's voice followed. "If she thinks she's going to college instead of managing this motel, she's got another thing coming. We'll make sure of that." The room went silent. My parents exchanged panicked looks. Then my mother did what she always did when cornered. She started crying. That's taken out of context, she wailed. Maya must have edited it. With one of those apps. Kids these days can fake anything with technology. My father jumped on that immediately. She's been unstable lately, talking about abandoning the family. She probably made this up to get attention. Ms. Evans looked between us, her expression unreadable. These are serious allegations. We'll need to verify the authenticity of these recordings. Call Leo, my mother said suddenly. My nephew, Leo, works in IT. He can prove these are fake. Within an hour, cousin Leo arrived with his laptop. He was 25 and had always been the family's go-to for computer problems. He listened to the recordings, typed on his computer, then looked up at Ms. Evans. Audio manipulation is incredibly easy these days, he said. There are dozens of apps that can splice conversations together. Without the original files and metadata, there's no way to prove these are real. Chloe's face fell. I felt my heart sink. Of course, the family would protect each other. That's what they always did. Ms. Evans made notes on her clipboard. I'll need to investigate further. In the meantime, the children will remain in the home under the current arrangement. After she left, my parents' masks dropped completely. My mother grabbed my arm, hard enough to leave marks. You think you're so smart? We're calling a family meeting. Let's see what Grandma Iris thinks about you trying to destroy this family. The next morning, our small apartment filled with relatives. Grandma Iris sat in the living room like a queen holding court. She was my mother's mother, the matriarch who had run this same hotel for 40 years and believed suffering built character. I hear you've been making trouble, she said when she saw me. Recording your parents like some kind of corporate spy. In my day, children who disrespected their elders got the belt. My aunts nodded in agreement. Uncle Tony, the lawyer, sat beside her, taking notes. My mother had already called him about representing them if things escalated. Maya's always been difficult, my mother said, dabbing at her eyes. We've tried everything. We even found a counselor friend who's been documenting her behavior issues. She produced a folder full of papers. I recognized the letterhead from Mrs. Peterson's counseling practice. She and my mother had gone to high school together. The papers claimed I showed signs of severe attachment disorder, oppositional defiance, and pathological lying. These are fake, I protested, but Grandma Iris silenced me with a look. Children who won't fulfill their family duties are sick in the head, she declared. Your mother did her duty. I did mine. Every woman in this family has done theirs. You think you're special. The family split into camps over the next few days. A few cousins privately told me they understood, but none would speak up publicly. Most sided with my parents. Family tradition was sacred. Breaking it meant betraying everything they stood for. My parents filed paperwork with the court, claiming I was mentally unstable and had been turning the younger children against them. They wanted emergency guardianship formally transferred to them, with me barred from any caretaking roles. The irony wasn't lost on me. You're going to regret this, my father said that night. We've given you everything. A roof over your head, food, a purpose, and this is how you repay us. The locks were changed the next morning. I came home from my shift at the diner to find my key didn't work. My clothes were in garbage bags on the lawn. The restraining order was taped to the front door. They claimed I'd threatened them during the family meeting. Chloe watched from her bedroom window, tears streaming down her face. She held up her phone, mouthing, I'm recording. But what good would that do when the whole family was against us? I slept in my car that night, parked behind the diner. My manager found me the next morning when he came to open up. I begged him not to say anything. I needed this job more than ever now. But word traveled fast in our small town. By the end of the week, 3 of my father's trucker buddies had come by the diner. They didn't say anything directly, just stood in my checkout line, buying single items, making comments about ungrateful children who don't appreciate their parents' sacrifices. My manager called me into his office the next day. I'm sorry, Maya, but we've been getting complaints. Customers say you seem distracted, that you're making mistakes. With everything going on, maybe it's best if you take some time off. Please, I begged. I need this job. I don't have anywhere else to go. He looked uncomfortable. It's just temporary, until things settle down with your family situation. But we both knew it wasn't temporary. In a small town where my father's trucking company did half the business, crossing him meant consequences. I spent the next 2 nights in my car before the women's shelter finally had a bed. The intake worker looked at my restraining order and frowned. Your parents filed this against their own daughter? I nodded, too exhausted to explain. The shelter was loud and crowded, but it was better than my car. I had a bed, a locker for my things, and access to a shower. I could figure out the rest later. The family court hearing was set for the following week. My parents had Uncle Tony representing them, pro bono. I had no one. Legal aid said I didn't qualify, since technically I wasn't the one seeking custody. The morning of the hearing, I put on my best clothes, wrinkled from being stored in my car. Chloe texted me. They've been coaching the kids all week. I'm sorry. I walked into the courtroom to find my parents looking like model citizens. My mother wore a conservative dress, my father a suit I'd never seen before. They'd brought character witnesses from their jobs. My mother's supervisor from the office where she worked part-time, my father's foreman, even Mrs. Peterson was there with her fake therapy notes. Your Honor, Uncle Tony began, my clients are hard-working parents, doing their best with a troubled teenager. Maya has always had difficulty accepting authority. These recordings she claims to have are clearly fabricated, as our IT expert will testify. Leo took the stand and repeated his claims about audio manipulation. He showed the judge examples of apps that could create fake conversations. He was smooth, professional, believable. Then my parents testified. They painted a picture of a rebellious daughter who resented having younger siblings, who made up stories for attention, who had threatened to destroy the family if she didn't get her way. We love all our children equally, my mother said, tears rolling down her cheeks. But Maya has always been different, difficult. We've tried so hard to help her. When it was my turn to speak, I felt like I was drowning. Every word I said sounded weak compared to the prepared statements. I tried to explain about the years of caretaking, the missed opportunities, the parentification. But without proof, it was my word against theirs. Where are these recordings now? The judge asked. My sister has them, I said. Chloe, she's been documenting everything. Your 16-year-old sister? The judge looked skeptical. The one your parents claim you've been manipulating? Chloe was called to testify. She walked in looking smaller than usual, her hands shaking. Our parents stared at her from their table. Uncle Tony smiled at her like a shark. Chloe, he began gently, has your sister, Maya, been asking you to record your parents? Chloe glanced at me, then at our parents. She didn't ask me to. I did it on my own. But she knew about it. She encouraged it. Chloe's voice cracked. I just wanted to help. Of course you did. You love your sister. But sometimes, people we love can lead us astray. Has Maya been telling you stories about your parents, making you see things differently? I watched Chloe crumble under the questioning. Our parents had gotten to her, threatened her, made her doubt herself. By the time Uncle Tony was done, it looked like I'd masterminded some elaborate scheme to turn my siblings against their loving parents. The judge looked troubled, but seemed to be buying it. I felt the walls closing in. Everything I'd worked for, everything I'd sacrificed, was being twisted into evidence against me. That's when Ms. Evans stood up. Your Honor, I'd like to present some additional findings from my investigation. She pulled out a thick manila folder and approached the bench. My parents shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Uncle Tony's confident smile faltered slightly. During my investigation, I discovered some concerning financial discrepancies, Ms. Evans said, her voice calm but firm. Mrs. Martinez has been applying for small business grants for employee training and development for the past 8 years. My mother's face went pale. My father gripped the edge of the table. The applications state that she requires these grants to train staff for the motel. However, my investigation revealed that Maya has been the only employee during all the hours covered by this assistance. Uncle Tony jumped to his feet. Your Honor, this is clearly a misunderstanding. My client may have made some clerical errors. Clerical errors that total over $50,000 in fraudulent claims. Ms. Evans interrupted. She produced photocopies of the applications, each one signed by Mrs. Martinez, claiming she was paying for professional management training. The judge leaned forward, suddenly very interested. Ms. Evans, are you suggesting grant fraud? That's exactly what I'm suggesting, Your Honor. Furthermore, Mr. Martinez has been claiming Maya as an employee on his business taxes, while simultaneously requiring her to work to support the household. He's been collecting tax credits for an employee who is functioning as an unpaid manager and contributing financially to the family. My father stood up so fast his chair scraped against the floor. This is ridiculous. We've supported Maya her entire life. Sit down, Mr. Martinez, the judge ordered sharply. Ms. Evans, do you have documentation to support these claims? Ms. Evans nodded and handed over more papers. Bank records showing deposits from grant programs, tax returns showing employee claims, and most tellingly, security footage from the grant office showing Mrs. Martinez signing these applications herself. My mother started sobbing loudly. Not the calculated tears from earlier, but genuine panic. We were just trying to make ends meet. The motel business is seasonal. We needed help. Then why force your daughter to provide free labor while collecting money meant to pay for that exact service? The judge asked. Uncle Tony tried to salvage the situation. Your Honor, even if there were some financial irregularities, that doesn't negate the fact that Maya has been exhibiting concerning behavior. The recordings are still suspicious, and actually, Ms. Evans interrupted again. I had those recordings analyzed by an independent audio forensics expert, not someone related to the family. She glanced pointedly at Leo, who suddenly found the floor very interesting. They're authentic. No signs of manipulation or editing. The judge's expression hardened. Mr. Tony, were you aware that your expert witness was a family member when you presented him as an objective professional? Uncle Tony's mouth opened and closed like a fish. He has legitimate IT credentials. That's not what I asked. Were you aware he was related to your clients? Yes, Your Honor. And you didn't think that was relevant information to disclose? The courtroom fell silent. I could hear my heart pounding in my chest. Chloe had started crying quietly in her seat in the gallery. The judge turned back to Ms. Evans. What else did your investigation uncover? A pattern of parentification dating back to when Maya was 6 years old. Multiple witnesses from the children's schools have confirmed that Maya was often the one attending parent-teacher conferences, signing permission slips with her parents' consent, and handling medical appointments for the younger children. She pulled out more documents. I also discovered that Maya's college scholarship was withdrawn due to missed deadlines that occurred while she was managing a plumbing emergency at the motel, the same motel her parents claimed they were paying for professional management to watch. The judge reviewed the papers, his frown deepening with each page. Mr. and Mrs. Martinez, I'm going to ask you directly. Have you been collecting government grants for employee training while forcing your eldest daughter to provide that labor for free? My mother looked at my father. My father looked at Uncle Tony. Uncle Tony looked defeated. Your Honor, my mother finally said, her voice small, we were just doing what our parents did. This is how families work. The oldest daughter helps with the business. It's tradition. Tradition doesn't override the law, Mrs. Martinez. Nor does it excuse grant fraud. The judge turned to me. Maya, do you have anything you'd like to add? I stood on shaky legs. I just wanted to go to college. I worked so hard for that scholarship. I love my siblings, but I wanted a chance at my own life. When I tried to leave, they called social services and claimed I was neglectful. They changed the locks. They got a restraining order based on lies. I've been sleeping in my car and then at a shelter because my own parents made me homeless for wanting an education. She's being dramatic, my father started, but the judge cut him off with a sharp gesture. Mr. Martinez, I've heard enough. Ms. Evans, what are your recommendations? Given the evidence of financial fraud and the systematic parentification of Maya, I recommend a full investigation by the district attorney's office. I also recommend that the restraining order against Maya be immediately vacated, as it appears to have been obtained under false pretenses. The judge nodded. I'm inclined to agree. I'm also ordering a forensic accounting review of the Martinez family finances. Mr. and Mrs. Martinez, you should be aware that grant fraud is a criminal offense that can result in prosecution. My parents went white. Uncle Tony started gathering his papers, clearly wanting to distance himself from the situation. Furthermore, the judge continued, I'm ordering temporary custody of the minor children to remain with the parents, under strict supervision from social services. Maya, you're not to be required to provide any labor. Any violation of this order will result in immediate removal of the children. But who will run the motel? My mother cried. Perhaps you should have thought of that before committing fraud with the money meant to pay for that exact service, the judge said coldly. Court is adjourned. Mr. and Mrs. Martinez, do not leave the state. You'll be notified of the criminal investigation proceedings. The gavel came down with a finality that echoed through the courtroom. My parents sat frozen, the reality of their situation finally sinking in. They tried to trap me, but had trapped themselves instead. Outside the courthouse, Ms. Evans pulled me aside. Maya, I know this is overwhelming, but you should know that the forensic accountant will likely find more than just the grant fraud. If your father has been claiming you as an employee while you were working, that's tax fraud, too. I nodded numbly. What happens now? Now, you focus on rebuilding your life. The restraining order will be vacated within 24 hours. You can return to the motel to get your belongings. I'll arrange for a police escort if you'd prefer. I don't want to go back there, I said quickly. Not to live. I just want my things. That's understandable. Do you have somewhere to stay? The shelter has space for another week. After that, I shrugged. Without my job, I had no idea what I'd do. Ms. Evans handed me a business card. This is a transitional housing program for young adults escaping family abuse. Tell them I sent you. They can help with housing and job placement. I took the card with trembling hands. Thank you for everything. If you hadn't investigated, and here's the twist I never saw coming. You can thank your grandmother, she said. Ich stared at her, confused. Grandma Iris? She was against me. Not your Grandma Iris, Ms. Evans said, her expression softening. My grandmother. Her name was Helen. She was your Grandma Iris's older sister. My mind reeled. She ran this motel before Iris did. She was the eldest daughter, too. She raised Iris and 10 other siblings, right here. She never got to go to school, never got to have her own life. She told me stories my whole childhood about the family tradition. She made me promise that if I ever got the chance, I would break the cycle. She looked at me, and for the first time, I saw not just a social worker, but a woman with her own history, her own ghosts. When your case came across my desk, and I saw the name Martinez and the Starlight Motel, I knew I had to dig deeper. My heart swelled with a strange mix of gratitude and sorrow. A woman I'd never met from a generation before had set this in motion. Your sister's diary helped, she said. That's what prompted me to dig into the finances. As I walked away from the courthouse, my phone buzzed with text after text. Family members who'd been at the hearing were already spreading the news. Some were angry, calling me a traitor. Others were shocked about the fraud. Grandma Iris sent a particularly nasty message about ungrateful children who don't understand sacrifice. I deleted them all without reading past the first few words. Their opinions didn't matter anymore. The next few days passed in a blur. True to Ms. Evans's word, the restraining order was vacated. I went back to the motel with a police escort to get my belongings. My parents weren't there, but Chloe was. She flew into my arms the moment she saw me. I'm so sorry they made me say those things. They said if I didn't cooperate, they'd send the little ones away. It's okay, I said, holding her tight. You were so brave. Ms. Evans told me about your diary. I started it when you got your scholarship, she admitted. I knew they'd try to stop you. I wanted to make sure there was proof of what they put you through. We packed my things quickly. My acceptance letter to community college was still in my accounting book. My hidden money was still in the shoebox, untouched. Small miracles. What's going to happen to us? Chloe asked as we loaded boxes into the police officer's car. I don't know, I said honestly. But whatever happens, I'll make sure you and the kids are okay. I promise. She nodded, trying to be brave. Maybe now Mom and Dad will actually have to take care of their own children. The thought was almost laughable. They'd never had to before. But with social services watching and criminal charges looming, they wouldn't have a choice. I moved into the transitional housing program the next week. It was a small apartment shared with 2 other young women escaping family situations. We each had our own bedroom and shared the common areas. It was clean, safe, and most importantly mine. The program also helped me find a new job at a different diner across town, far from my father's trucking connections. The manager there was understanding about my situation and flexible with scheduling around my community college classes. Yes, I decided to still go. The acceptance was still valid, and with financial aid and my new job, I could make it work. It wouldn't be the university scholarship I dreamed of, but it was still a step forward. 2 weeks after the hearing, the other shoe dropped. My parents were formally charged with grant fraud and tax evasion. The forensic accountant had found exactly what Ms. Evans predicted. Years of false claims totaling over $50,000. Uncle Tony refused to represent them, citing conflict of interest. They had to use a public defender. The irony wasn't lost on me. They claimed I didn't qualify for legal aid, but now they needed it themselves. Chloe kept me updated through carefully worded texts. Our parents were panicking. They'd been ordered to pay back all the fraudulent claims, plus penalties. The motel might have to be sold. My father's trucking boss had cut his hours after hearing about the charges. My mother had been suspended from her office job, pending the outcome of the criminal case. For the first time in their lives, they were having to actually parent. No eldest daughter to dump the work on, no government money to collect while someone else did the job. Mom actually had to change a diaper yesterday. Chloe texted me one evening. She acted like it was the end of the world. I should have felt vindicated, but mostly I just felt sad. Sad for my siblings, who were confused and scared. Sad that it had come to this. Even a little sad for my parents, who were so trapped in their own upbringing they couldn't see how wrong it was. The family reaction was swift and brutal. Grandma Iris called an emergency family meeting that I obviously wasn't invited to. Chloe reported back that it was a disaster. Half the family thought my parents were victims of an ungrateful daughter. The other half were quietly admitting they'd seen the signs, but hadn't wanted to get involved. Cousin Maria stood up and said she went through the same thing. Chloe told me during one of our phone calls. She said Grandma Iris made her run the family farm, too. Then Aunt Rosa said it happened to her. Suddenly, everyone was arguing about whether it was tradition or abuse. The family was fracturing along generational lines. The older generation insisted it was just how things were done. The younger generation was starting to question why it was always the eldest daughters who sacrificed everything. 3 months into the criminal proceedings, my parents did something desperate. They fled. I was in my evening statistics class when my phone started buzzing. I ignored it until I saw it was Ms. Evans calling. I stepped out into the hallway to answer. Maya, your parents missed their court date this morning. They've also pulled the younger children out of school. We believe they're attempting to leave the state. My blood ran cold. What about Chloe? She's the one who alerted us. She's safe at school right now. She said your parents packed up the van last night and told the kids they were going on a surprise vacation. I sank onto a bench in the hallway. They were really going to run, take the kids, and disappear rather than face the consequences of their actions. What can I do? I asked. Stay where you are. Don't try to intervene. We've notified state police and issued an Amber Alert for the children. Chloe said she overheard them talking about going to stay with relatives in Texas. Of course, my father had cousins there who probably had no idea about the charges. They could disappear into another big family where eldest daughters raising siblings was just normal life. I went back to class, but couldn't concentrate. My professor noticed my distress and quietly told me I could leave if I needed to. I gathered my things and drove back to my apartment, my hands shaking the entire way. The next few hours were the longest of my life. I sat by my phone, waiting for updates. My roommates made me tea and sat with me, sharing their own stories of family dysfunction. It helped, knowing I wasn't alone. Finally, around midnight, Ms. Evans called. We found them. State police stopped them at a gas station about 2 hours from the Texas border. Everyone is safe. I sobbed with relief. What happens now? Your parents are being arrested for custodial interference and violating their bond conditions. The children are being placed in emergency foster care until we can determine the best placement. What about Chloe? She's 18 in 2 months. We're looking into emergency emancipation so she can maintain some independence. Maya, I need to ask, would you consider taking temporary guardianship of your siblings? The question I've been dreading and expecting in equal measure. I don't know if I can. I'm barely managing to support myself. I understand. It's not a decision you need to make tonight. But think about it. Foster care isn't ideal, and you're the only family member who's shown genuine concern for their well-being. After we hung up, I sat in the dark living room, thinking. I'd fought so hard to escape the role of surrogate mother. The thought of voluntarily taking it on again made me feel sick. But the thought of my siblings scattered across foster homes made me feel worse. I called Chloe. She answered on the first ring, sounding exhausted. Hey, are you okay? Yeah, I'm at the police station. They're being really nice. They gave me hot chocolate. Ms. Evans said they're looking into emancipating you early. Yeah, she mentioned that. Chloe paused. She also asked if I thought you'd take the kids. What do you think I should do? Chloe was quiet for a long moment. I think you should do whatever keeps you safe and healthy. You've sacrificed enough for this family. But she trailed off. But maybe we could do it differently. Together. Not like before, where you did everything, but like actual sisters helping each other. I could get a part-time job. We could apply for assistance, the legal kind. Make sure the kids get therapy to deal with everything. Break the cycle. For real. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of the decision. It would mean giving up the dorms, finding a bigger place, putting some dreams on hold again. Or maybe just dreaming differently. Chloe said softly, college during the day, homework help at night, soccer practice and PDA meetings. Normal family stuff, but where everyone pitches in, where the kids see what a real family looks like. She was painting a picture I'd never dared imagine. A family where responsibility was shared, where love didn't mean sacrifice, where we could heal together. Can I think about it? I asked. Of course. But Maya, whatever you decide, I'm proud of you. You stood up to them. You broke free. That took more courage than any of us had. The next morning, I met with Ms. Evans and a family court advocate. They laid out what temporary guardianship would entail. Financial assistance was available. The kids would get counseling. Chloe would be emancipated and could be a co-guardian. We'd have support from social services. Your parents will likely get prison time, the advocate explained. 2 to 3 years, based on the charges. The kids need stability during that time. Foster care can provide that, but family placement is always preferred if it's healthy. I thought about my siblings. The 8-year-old who'd stopped talking to me after our parents' manipulation. The twins who were probably so confused. The baby who'd called me mama before I taught him my real name. What about Grandma Iris? I asked. Won't she try to get custody? Ms. Evans shook her head. She's been deemed unfit due to her age and the fact that she knew about the parentification and encouraged it. Several family members have come forward with their own stories after your case became known. She's facing her own investigation now. The dominoes were falling throughout the family. The secret everyone had kept for generations was finally in the light. If I say yes, I said slowly, I need guarantees. The kids get therapy. Chloe and I get family counseling to learn how to do this right. Financial support for housing and childcare. Real childcare, not me missing classes. And help navigating college with this responsibility. All of that can be arranged, the advocate assured me. We want this to succeed if you choose to do it. The goal is to break the cycle, not perpetuate it. I asked for one more day to decide. That evening, I sat with my roommates and talked it through. They'd both escaped abusive families and understood the weight of what I was considering. The question is, one of them said, can you live with either decision? If you take them, can you handle the responsibility without losing yourself? If you don't, can you handle the guilt? It was a fair question. I'd spent so long being forced into motherhood that I didn't know if I could choose it freely. But maybe that was the point. This time it would be a choice. That night, I made a list. Pros and cons, dreams deferred versus siblings scattered. The life I'd planned versus the family I could build. By morning, I had my answer. I called Ms. Evans. I'll do it, but only with Chloe as co-guardian and all the support we discussed. I'll start the paperwork. Maya, I want you to know how proud I am of you. Not just for taking this on, but for setting boundaries and asking for help. That's what breaking the cycle looks like. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Court hearings for guardianship, apartment hunting with a social worker, meetings with the kids' teachers and counselors, setting up therapy schedules, learning about trauma-informed parenting. My parents' criminal trial was set for the following month. They were being held without bail after the flight attempt. I hadn't spoken to them since the first hearing, and I didn't plan to. Some bridges were meant to stay burned. The day I got guardianship was surreal. The judge made it clear this was temporary, pending my parents' criminal trial and sentencing. But for now, I was legally responsible for my siblings. This time, with support and resources and my own choice backing it up. Chloe and I moved into a 4-bedroom apartment subsidized by the Family Assistance Program. It was in a better school district, close to both my community college and Chloe's high school. We spent a weekend painting bedrooms and assembling furniture, trying to make it feel like home. The kids were brought over on a Tuesday afternoon. They looked shell-shocked, clutching garbage bags of hastily packed belongings. The 8-year-old wouldn't meet my eyes. The twins hid behind the social worker. The toddler reached for me instinctively, then pulled back, confused. Hey guys, I said, kneeling to their level. I know this is scary and confusing, but Chloe and I are going to take care of you for a while, okay? This is your new home. Why can't we go home? One of the twins asked. Because mom and dad made some bad choices and have to face the consequences, Chloe said gently. But we're going to be okay. All of us, together. It wasn't easy. The first week was rough. Tantrums and tears and questions I didn't know how to answer. The 8-year-old finally broke down and admitted our parents had told him I was trying to steal them away. It took patient explanation from his therapist to help him understand the truth. But slowly we found a rhythm. Chloe and I split the morning routine. I handled breakfast while she got the little ones dressed. We hired a real babysitter for the hours between school and when one of us could be home. The kids did homework at the kitchen table while I cooked dinner. Chloe helped with baths and bedtime while I studied. It wasn't the college experience I dreamed of, no dorm parties or late-night study sessions in the library. But it was real. It was mine. It was ours. The community college professors were understanding about my situation. Several had been through similar experiences and offered extensions when family court dates conflicted with exams. My grades stayed strong, even with the chaos at home. 3 months into our new arrangement, something beautiful happened. I was making dinner when the toddler tugged on my shirt. "Maya," he said, using my actual name. "Can I help?" I handed him a wooden spoon to stir the pot, keeping my hand over his to guide him. "Good job, buddy. I love you, Maya," he said matter-of-factly, then toddled off to play with his blocks. Chloe caught my eye from across the kitchen, where she was helping with math homework. We both had tears in our eyes. This was what love was supposed to look like. Not obligation or tradition or guilt, just choice and care and building something better. My parents' trial began the following week. Chloe and I agreed to keep the kids home that day, not wanting them to see their parents in orange jumpsuits and shackles. But we watched the news coverage that night after they were asleep. Both parents pleaded guilty to reduced charges in exchange for lighter sentences. 2 years for the fraud, 3 years probation after. They'd have to pay restitution and attend parenting classes if they wanted any chance of regaining custody after release. "Do you think they'll try?" Chloe asked as we turned off the TV. "I don't know," I admitted. "Maybe prison will change them. Maybe they'll realize what they lost. Or maybe they'll come out angry and try to go back to how things were." "We'll be ready either way," Chloe said firmly. "The kids are in therapy. We're documenting everything. We're doing this right." She was right. We had 2 years to establish a stable, healthy home. 2 years to help the kids heal. 2 years to prove that the cycle could be broken. I thought about the scholarship I'd lost, the dorm room I'd never sleep in, the traditional college experience that had slipped away. But sitting in our living room, listening to Chloe quiz herself for a history test while I worked on calculus problems, I realized I hadn't lost my dreams. They'd just taken a different shape. I was still going to graduate, still going to transfer to a 4-year university. It would take longer, be harder, require more juggling. But I'd have something else, too. A family I'd chosen to build. Siblings who knew they were loved without conditions. A sister who stood beside me as an equal partner. The cycle our grandmother had perpetuated, that our mother had continued, stopped with us. Chloe and I would make mistakes, certainly. But we'd never tell the kids that sacrifice was love. We'd never make them choose between their dreams and their family. We'd show them that both were possible, with help and boundaries and the courage to do things differently. As I closed my textbook for the night, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Hope. Not just for my own future, but for all of ours. We were writing a new story, 1 page at a time. The sentencing hearing arrived faster than expected. Chloe and I sat in the back row, watching our parents stand before the judge in their orange jumpsuits. They looked smaller, somehow, diminished by months of legal proceedings and the weight of their choices. The prosecutor laid out the case methodically. $32,000 in fraudulent grant claims, 8 years of tax fraud, child endangerment through parentification, custodial interference, flight to avoid prosecution. Each charge carried its own penalty. My mother's public defender tried to argue for leniency, citing their difficult upbringing and financial hardship. But the judge wasn't having it. She'd reviewed all the evidence, including Chloe's diary and the recordings that Leo had tried to discredit. "Mr. and Mrs. Martinez," the judge said, her voice stern, "you systematically exploited your eldest daughter for nearly a decade. You collected government funds meant for her care while forcing her to provide that care herself. When she tried to pursue an education, you sabotaged her opportunities. When she sought independence, you used the legal system to punish her." My father's jaw clenched. My mother stared at the floor. "I'm sentencing you each to 24 months in state prison, followed by 3 years of supervised probation. You will pay full restitution of $32,000 plus penalties. Upon release, you must complete a court-approved parenting program before any consideration of custody restoration. The gavel came down. My parents were led away without looking back at us. I felt Chloe's hand slip into mine, squeezing tight. Outside the courthouse, Ms. Evans met us with paperwork. The permanent guardianship hearing is next month. Given your parents' sentences and the stability you provided, I expect it to go smoothly. That afternoon, I picked up the kid from school. The 8-year-old, Marcus, had started talking to me again after months of therapy. The twins, Rosa and Elena, ran to the car, chattering about their art projects. Little Gabriel, now 3, insisted on showing me the dinosaur sticker his teacher had given him. "Where were you and Chloe this morning?" Marcus asked as we drove home. I'd learned honesty worked better than evasion. "We were at court. Your mom and dad got their sentences today." "How long?" His voice was small. 2 years. "But you'll be able to visit them, if you want to, when they're ready." He nodded, processing this. "Will we still live with you?" "As long as you need to. Chloe and I aren't going anywhere." That evening, while Chloe helped with homework and I prepared dinner, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Is this Maya Martinez?" The voice was unfamiliar, professional. "Yes, this is Victoria Chun from the County Community Foundation. We received your application for the returning student scholarship. I'm pleased to inform you that you've been selected as one of this year's recipients." I nearly dropped the phone. I'd applied on a whim, encouraged by my English professor who'd noticed my situation. The scholarship would cover my remaining community college expenses and help with the transfer to a 4-year university. The committee was particularly moved by your essay about breaking generational cycles while maintaining family bonds, Victoria continued. "The award ceremony is next week, if you're able to attend." After hanging up, I stood in the kitchen, overwhelmed. Chloe noticed first. "What's wrong?" she asked, abandoning the math worksheet. "Nothing's wrong. I got the scholarship. The one Professor Martinez told me about." Chloe squealed and hugged me tight. The kids looked up from their activities, confused but catching our excitement. "Does this mean you're going away?" Gabriel asked, his lower lip trembling. I knelt down to his level. "No, buddy. It means I can finish school here and then go to a bigger school nearby. I'll still be home every night." The scholarship ceremony was small, held in the community college library. 20 returning students, each with their own story of perseverance. I wore my best dress, the one I'd bought secondhand for court appearances. Chloe and the kids sat in the front row, Gabriel waving enthusiastically every time I looked their way. When they called my name, I walked to the podium on shaky legs. The scholarship coordinator handed me the certificate and an envelope containing the first installment. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough. Enough to stop worrying about choosing between textbooks and groceries. Enough to hire a reliable babysitter for evening classes. Enough to believe that dreams deferred weren't always dreams denied. 2 weeks later, Grandma Iris died. The call came from Aunt Rosa, her voice carefully neutral. "The funeral is Saturday. You should know that some family members don't think you should come." "I understand," I said, and I did. The family fracture that had started with my case had never healed. Half of them still believed I'd destroyed a sacred tradition. The other half had started questioning everything they'd been taught about family obligations. Chloe and I discussed it that night after the kids were asleep. "I want to go," she said. Not for her, but for closure. To see that it's really over. We arranged for the kids to stay with a respite care family for the day. The funeral was held at the same church where I'd been baptized, where I'd spent countless Sundays wrestling with younger siblings while my parents dozed in the pew. The reception hall was thick with tension. Conversation stopped when we entered. Some relatives turned their backs, others nodded acknowledgement. Cousin Maria approached first, her own eldest daughter at her side. "I've been thinking about what you did," she said quietly. "My Isabella is 15 now. I've been making her help with her siblings, the same way." She trailed off, glancing at her daughter. "We're going to do things differently." One by one, other cousins approached, some to condemn, others to confess their own struggles. The generational divide was stark. The older relatives spoke of duty and sacrifice. The younger ones whispered about dreams abandoned and childhoods lost. Uncle Tony cornered me near the coffee station. "You destroyed this family," he he said, his voice low and venomous. Your parents are in prison because of you. They're in prison because they committed fraud, I replied calmly. I just told the truth. He stormed off, but not before I caught the doubt in his eyes. Even he was beginning to question the narrative he'd helped construct. As we left, I noticed Leo standing by his car, looking uncomfortable. He approached hesitantly. Maya, I need to apologize. Why did in court? Lying about those recordings, my mom pressured me, said family comes first. But he shrugged helplessly. I've got a daughter now. Made me think about what kind of family traditions I want to pass on. I nodded, not offering forgiveness, but acknowledging his words. Some bridges could be rebuilt. Others were better left as rubble. The permanent guardianship hearing went smoothly, as Ms. Evans had predicted. Our parents didn't contest it, perhaps finally understanding that their choices had consequences. The judge praised the stable home Chloe and I had created, noting the children's improved school performance and emotional well-being. Spring semester brought new challenges. I'd registered for 18 credits, determined to graduate on time despite everything. Chloe juggled her senior year of high school with part-time work at a local bakery. We tag-teamed childcare duties with military precision, our shared calendar color-coded and constantly updated. The hardest part was helping the kids process their trauma. Marcus had nightmares about being taken away again. The twins wet the bed when stressed. Gabriel clung to us constantly, afraid we'd disappear like his parents had. Their therapist, Dr. Williams, became our lifeline. She taught us about trauma responses and attachment repair. Slowly, painfully, we learned to be the stable, predictable presence the kids needed. Healing isn't linear, she reminded us during one particularly difficult week when Marcus had refused to go to school and the twins had been caught stealing snacks to hide in their room. They're testing whether you'll abandon them when things get hard. We didn't abandon them. We showed up day after day.